Welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm thrilled that you can join us today. We're going to have a wonderful conversation. We're going to learn about a conference that was just held in Bali called the International Dementia and Innovation Conference. And I can't wait to hear all about it, what the results were, pulling, people with dementia together. I think it's going to be really exciting. Our guest was a speaker there, and her name is Leah Bisiani. And we're just going to learn so much more. I could go on and on about her. So let's go talk to Leah. Well, Leah, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I highly respect you and the work you do. And I always feel elevated and lifted after talking to you because you are so filled with hope. So I'm hoping my audience will feel that that same beautiful resonance of, gosh, we can do better, and people are doing better out there, and dementia doesn't have to be so scary, because I really think you bring that all to light, and you do that in such a beautiful, comfortable way. So thanks for coordinating our time differences here, because she is over in Australia and I'm in the US in Minnesota. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Laurie, and thank you so much for having me as well. The respect goes both ways. I've known you and followed you for a very long time, and I have so much respect with how inspiring I find your work as well. So I feel really privileged to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're kind of kindred souls, I think, on a
lot
of levels there. So why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself before we kind of dive into things?
Okay, well, my name's Leah Bisiani. I'm a dementia and aged care consultant here in Australia. I've worked in this industry for 35 plus years, so about half of my lifetime. And I'm an RN Division 1 by trade who's completed their Masters in Health Science, or my Masters in Health Science, with a dementia stream, and added to my qualifications to enable me to get into a position where I can create change and make a difference to the lives of people living with dementia, advocate for their human rights, and provide support that is responsive to the needs of the uniqueness of every single person who lives with dementia. I also dispel a lot of the myths and stereotypes associated with dementia, and enable people to look at it through a different lens, so that together humanity can work in partnership with other human beings who are living with dementia and walk forward into a future that celebrates people for their differences and champions the better way forward in the realms of dementia support.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, you just got back from Bali
I
at
did.
the International Dementia and Innovation Conference. I'm dying to hear about that. Tell us a little bit about the conference, what it was all about, and what your part was of it, and what you walked away with.
Yeah, well,
You want it all.
oh my God. Well, it was held in Bali, of all places. Like, what a place to hold a conference, number one. From the 25th to the 30th of September in the most breathtaking part of Bali, Jasri. I'm still buzzing from the intensity of such a heartwarming experience. It was really super cool. And first of all, I got to pay homage to the extraordinarily dynamic Dr. Rodney Jellick, the mastermind behind all of this, Sarah, his glorious wife, and my cocktail partner in crime, the dazzling Nicole Smith, Monique Pochran, Far, the incomparable and quite quirky. I don't know if you've heard of these people, but I'm going to give them a plug. Maury Voicey Berlin and the sensational team at Community Home Australia. and all of the incredible sponsors for holding the most riveting, epic, remarkable conference I've ever had the pleasure of attending. I'm pretty much still basking in the afterglow of this once in a lifetime experience and opportunity to luxuriate in the presence of innovation at its best, whilst hanging out with so many passionate, pioneering blazers, groundbreaking leaders, living with dementia experts, and global change makers, all selflessly sharing their magic. We forged these amazing, positive, interactive channels with each other, where we honoured and championed a future where we listened to people with dementia and humbly embrace their voice. After all, people with dementia are the true experts on dementia, are they not? The best we can do is assume, and subjectively at most. So they are our teachers. So I never fail to be inspired, especially by people such as my dear mate, the magnificent William Yates, and of course, meeting for the first time the wonderful Bobby Redman, who were keynote speakers. So every morning, it started with a person living with dementia articulating the lived experience of dementia. So it was an electric whirlwind of fabulousness. It was transformative. I was captivated by such an impressive and influential stance upholding human rights. So I felt incredibly grateful to be part of it and very proud to be afforded the privilege to be part of such a spectacular experience, and being given the opportunity to also present some of my own work. But there's more. Dr. Rodney and his phenomenal team have also created a resort called the Aashaya Jasri Resort in Bali, and it's made up of villas also set in paradise, nestled in the lush hills of Bali, where people with dementia and or disabilities are afforded a happy place to nurture their souls and make their hearts sing. So I've been there 3 times and am so overwhelmingly impressed with how breathtaking it is there, while witnessing the soul and generosity of spirit behind a man's dream becoming a reality. So the outcome is a magnificent, enabling environment where people with dementia are empowered to continue living well with dementia and go and chill in Bali, hang out in the sun, eat delicious food, suck back a few cocktails, and just go on a holiday instead of having to go into residential aged care for respite. So the future is very bright with these people in the arena, and I applaud them all. I'm in awe of them, and they have my most sincere admiration. So that's my little plug on the conference. There's going to be another one next year in September, so watch out for it. It's already started being advertised as far as I know. And I think that we all need to get on the bandwagon with these people because together we're more powerful.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Now, do you know how long they've been doing these conferences, or was this the first one?
This is the first larger one. I went to a leadership retreat there earlier in the year in February where there was about a dozen of us. And that was incredible in its own way because the informality of it meant that we bonded on a level that we ordinarily wouldn't at these larger conferences. And so the one in September was the first larger conference with people from all around the world attending. Alzheimer's in Indonesia, Alzheimer's Netherlands, Alzheimer's Singapore, people from everywhere all came together, all leaders in the field, and some people who couldn't make it presented via virtual medium. And it enabled so many of us who are like-minded to get together in a way that we ordinarily wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so.
Oh, cool. I love that they kicked the morning off with people with dementia.
Right?
Since I got into this business in 2009, I've been fighting like you for their voice to be
Mm.
heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed at the pushback, at conferences and stuff. We see it more now here in the US, but initially it was like, no, I'm not going to speak unless I can have somebody with me, or better yet, even a panel and, get some interaction going with the audience and stuff.
Yeah.
And every single time we did it, every single time, people would be, that was the best session, because they weren't expecting it. And so many people were 20 years in the field,
Yeah.
and it just changed everything for them.
Well, of course, because like people with dementia say, not about us without us. So we
Mhm.
should never be running conferences that are about people living with dementia without their voice.
Or any other disease, as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
absolutely.
And the patient advocacy stuff has now raised, but it's raised out of a business sense in a lot of cases, and not
Yeah.
from a heart level, in terms
Mm.
of, listen, this isn't just doing a quota and patting a back. This is real knowledge that is simply spoken, many times easy to implement. Some of the stuff's more complicated, but a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that they want from us
Mm.
is very easy changes, but no one knows. If we're not talking about it, we're still peeking through the window and guessing what they want. And I
Hmm.
love the resort idea too. Now, do they do actual respite care where you could drop a loved one
Yes.
off?
So the only additional costs, I would guess, in regards to someone going to Bali is the airfare and someone flying with them. But the resort is set up with 24/7 personal care workers and registered nurses. There's
Wow.
medical assistance just down the street. The whole resort is wheelchair and disability friendly. Bathrooms, the pathways, the rooms. If you want to bring your family, then you can stay in the larger villas, which have additional beds in them. All of the food cooked on site is, oh my God, it is delicious, as are the cocktails, which I keep mentioning. And there's a pool. They go on all of these wonderful excursions and activities in Bali. It's just about living your life. And
Oh,
and unfortunately, traditionally, because people have dementia, humanity thinks that they don't still have the same needs as they've always had, which is rubbish. People with dementia have exactly the same needs that we do, that they've always had, and they need to continue their life as they know it. So this enables them to do so. It's the most inclusive place I've ever seen for people with dementia to go to and sit back and have a bit of a holiday. And why
yeah.
would you not want to continue that part of somebody's life if you've got the opportunity to do so?
Oh, exactly. Exactly. I did a
Very cool.
dementia friendly cruise, but there's so many hurdles.
Mm,
It's nice because they're in the same room and you're going here and there, and everybody had a great time. But I always said, if I did it next time, I
yeah,
would want to do it someplace on land, just because
yeah.
if there's medical emergencies and things like that, and you learn as you go. And this one
Mm.
just sounds like they just know how to handle it.
Well, they do
Yeah.
because they work in the field. So
Yep.
what they've done is they've catered to the people that require the support. So
Hmm.
nothing's missed, even to the point where I remember saying to Rodney, well, it's very hard because you're not allowed to drink the water in Bali, right? You've got to buy bottled water. So when you clean your teeth, you can't drink the water out of the tap. When you have a shower, you don't want to be drinking the water. He has gone so far as to have the entire place replumbed with filtered water so that when somebody with dementia cleans their teeth or has a shower, it doesn't matter if they drink the water.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, we could probably talk about this,
Oh, we could.
forever, but I
You might
also,
need to get him on and have a talk to him.
I definitely do. I definitely do. And yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. But I also, there's so many different things. I can tell that you are inspired by your work. And
Mm.
my guess is, like me, you're inspired by people living with dementia. Can you tell me? Because sometimes people don't understand. I find they're like, well, how can that be? They're ill, or they're not able to communicate, or, I mean, there's just so many stigmas that I want to talk about as well. But
Hmm.
how do people with dementia inspire you?
They inspire me every day. They are so resilient. They are so strong. They are so courageous. They're living with an acquired disability that they didn't choose to get,
Mhm.
and dealing with a condition that impacts on their cognition. We don't have to deal with that pressure. And so instead of us creating additional pressure by not understanding their needs or care that is, or support that is responsive to the person, we need to start changing our viewpoints on dementia. And when I work with people with dementia and see how incredibly resilient they are, like I just said, it inspires me to want to be a better version of myself, because they deserve so much better than what they receive at this point in time. I know we've come a long way, and we definitely have, from when I started out on this journey. However, we need to do better, for the simple reason that all human beings deserve the very best at any time of their life. And our responsibility is to support people in the areas that they are having difficulty with, whilst also enabling them to continue to live their life the best they can with a condition called dementia, just like we assist people with other medical conditions to live well. Dementia is no different. Having cognitive changes does not strip a person of who they are. It does not take away their humanity or their needs or their choices or their rights. So it is up to us to stand up and give a voice to the right way and normalize that for them, because they deserve nothing less.
Well, it's for them, but I also think everything we do for others, we receive back. You learn, and they teach you different ways. I remember when I was younger, I worked in the field with developmentally disabled. And I had so many friends like, how could you do that? And they might visit me at work, and they were literally scared.
Yeah.
And by the time they left, they were laughing and having a good time and engaging people, because it's just a matter of taking that fear away. And they brought me so much joy.
They're just people like we are,
Yeah.
with cognitive changes. And unfortunately, for a very long time, and even still, society as a whole has been conditioned to think about dementia a certain way. There's a lot of stigma and stereotype and prejudicial bias that's been fostered for a very long time by the media, even by the healthcare system, that does instill fear. And it's all about sensationalism, and it's incorrect. Because when we condition people to think a certain way about people and use negative terminology to actually describe it, then that means that we're influenced to actually approach something negatively. And when you actually project negativity onto another person, they're going to project it back at you, just like we would if it was us. So we need to stop the way dementia is being portrayed, so that we can then create a change in the vantage points associated with what it's like to live with dementia.
Well, and so often I think, this is my personal view, fear has been monetized by big business
Oh, it has.
to raise funds
Yeah.
or to sell products. And
Yeah.
I see a couple of commercials, and I was talking to somebody else, and actually they said it to me. Oh, I see this one commercial, and the hair just raises on the back of my neck, because they're trying to tell people, go ask your doctor for these medications, because
Oh my
of this
God.
and that. And then you're looking
Yep.
at the commercial, and the person who's causing the agitation is approaching them wrong. They're talking to them. I mean, you go on and on and on, the tone of the voice, the whole 9 yards, and you're like, they
Yeah.
just are pushing, in this case, medication. But it's used, it's used for fundraisers for businesses that don't always put what a lot of us think is a large portion towards actual care and cure and education. It goes to salaries and bonuses and buildings and things like that as well. So
You're very right, because big pharma, medications, that's one of my soapboxes actually. It in my mind, medicating people because you don't understand them, medicating people because they're different, or to make your life easier, is considered elder abuse. So in all reality, we should be veering away from those type of approaches, because all they do is destroy somebody's life. And I understand that dementia may well challenge us as care partners because of the fundamental complexity of the condition. And there's so many different types of dementia. But to support people with dementia in a respectful and dignified manner requires a major conversion of our inner fears and impressions associated with dementia, because otherwise we start making erroneous choices for them by allowing our blemished preconceived notions to take precedence, thereby perverting their sense of personal characteristics and needs. And this is so wrong. So, it's imperative that we appreciate the world through the eyes of the person with dementia and understand that dementia as a condition doesn't really cause suffering or strip people of their humanity. The only way that we can do that is when another person actually does it. So when another person strips you of your humanity, that is what's going to cause the suffering.
Yeah.
So we actually are the ones that initiate the suffering in people living with dementia by our approaches. And that
So
is a
true.
really sad and very disturbing aspect of the way people approach dementia.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I always talk to people about, imagine if you were told, throughout your day that you have a behavior and that you have to
Right?
change. Behavior that is not a compliment, that is not
Well,
something.
it's just rude. It's just
Yeah.
rude, because don't we all display changes in behavior when we're not happy about something? We all get cranky, we all get irritable, we all get annoyed with our families, we all raise our voices. We all display change behavior every single day of our lives when our needs aren't met. Yet we are so intent on labeling people living with dementia around change behavior. It
That
really it needs to stop. The fault lays with us and our behavior in generating this attitude.
Well, and I don't even like the word behavior.
Neither do I.
And I talk to people about how powerful our words are. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, how would you like to be told you had a behavior all the time? And
Right.
there's never one person that's gone, yeah, I kind of
So
like that word.
discourteous.
You know,
Yeah.
it's, and like you said, our moods switch throughout the day,
Mm-hmm.
unless maybe we are overly medicated and zoned out, which, used to happen a lot when people
It did.
like those changes. But really, it's just a trigger. It's a clue to tell us something's not right. I don't feel
That's it.
comfortable. It's very
Yeah.
basic. And if we can look inward to say, oh, they're not so different as me.
They aren't.
I know,
They're
but
just normal people who think differently.
people, like you said, we have been taught to look at them
We
as
have.
different.
And the terminology used, like you said, influences and conditions people to think a certain way. Because when you think about it, I prefer the instead of using the word behavior, um, just a human response to unmet need, or stress related response, or expression of need. But when we start using terminology like someone, like they used for a very long time here in Australia, the words or the terms challenging behaviour. Challenging who? What? Us in our task orientated little world? Or the person who's living with a condition which is changing their cognition? Like, where's our empathy here? And then they started using the terms behaviour of concern. Like, so what? Concerning, it's all about us.
Yep.
And BPSD, behavioural and psychological symptoms of dementia, like that's the worst one of all. And then we start critiquing it even further and insinuating that people are misbehaving, or they're inappropriate, or they're problematic, or attention seeking, or disruptive. Now, these imageries are essentially supplementary, counterproductive, and harmful assumptions, and are incorrect, and that is inappropriate. Because this type of subjective judgment impacts on how we perceive people. And then it fosters the ongoing stigma again, and prejudicial bias influences how we approach people with dementia, but also on how they perceive themselves.
Oh, big
So it's
time.
like this really evil spiral, which we've actually initiated.
Yeah. Well, and one of the funniest things that I hear and it's not funny, but it's funny because I put the puzzle together different. So when people go, well, they're just so withdrawn because you don't accept them. They don't feel part of the community. They don't
That's
feel
right.
welcome. They don't feel engaged. They don't feel respected. You would
Exactly.
step back too. And
Yeah.
and then when you are able to pull them out and just have a simple conversation and have eye
Right.
contact, and the words I like are the clues and the triggers. And the reason I like
Mm.
using those words versus behavior, because
Mm-hmm.
I think most people understand if you have a clue or if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for a trigger, now
Totally.
it's on you,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
you can help. I mean, bottom line, it's getting to the whys. If your friend is
Mm.
down, you want to know why in order to
That's it.
help.
So why is it we don't do that with people with dementia? That's always my question. And I always encourage people to imagine what it must feel like to be marginalized and discriminated against,
Mhm.
to be dehumanized and defined as a medical condition, to have unfair expectations placed on you cognitively, to have support that doesn't respond to your unique needs, to have your personhood and your sense of self and your identity ripped away from, by the roots, to be starved of meaningful engagement day after day after day. Basically, I don't think any of us would be happy with that. And I think that any of us would have something to say about it.
Oh
So
yeah.
we don't have the right to condemn and judge people with dementia for doing exactly that. Misrepresenting what for others are considered natural, normal responses to life shouldn't be used as a weapon to demonize people with dementia. They, just concede that those variations are most probably a response to feeling devalued, disrespected, to the point where unmet need essential to that person's life is being ignored, and the grievances that arise from that. So, when we look at it, we need to basically say to ourselves that it's us that's not delivering, and that perhaps we're the catalyst to creating and perpetuating the tainted bias by conditioning society to sustain their alarming penchant for belittling people with dementia based on mainstream valid responses to life. And, only by trying to look at it through a different lens can we possibly understand.
Yeah, I totally agree. And they might have been able to get by with that with our older generations, but the
Mm.
boomers won't remain quiet.
No,
And
because we speak up,
their
right?
families won't either.
Yeah, we
One of
know
the
what our rights are at this generation. The
Yeah.
generation before, I even remember with my mum when she was dying, "Oh, I don't want to bother the doctor, dear.
Mhm.
No, he's a very busy man, and everything that the doctor said was gospel."
Yep.
Whereas the baby boomers, we know what our rights are, we challenge the system, and we stand up for those rights. And
Mhm.
I think that that's a great thing because it's starting to get rid of all of those ageist attitudes for a very long time. It's plagued older people and then created a situation where people's rights are being demeaned, but also everything that's important to their life is being removed. So instead of focusing on the face value of these expressions of need, we need to listen to the feelings. So I always say we need to listen to behaviour. So ask yourself, what is the person trying to tell me? Because it's usually going to be something that's happening in the now, because people living with dementia usually live in the moment. And people say we should live in the moment, don't they? Life is most fully experienced in the now. So we need to embrace that ideal of living in the moment with them and say to ourselves, what are they trying to tell me? Because it's something that's going on in front of them right now, and successfully capture the origins behind any stress related responses. And it means that we can then effectively remove those stressors from that person's life, in turn, addressing what the person might be attempting to portray. And then it reminds us that the responses we're referring to are not deliberate or random, but an authentic and genuine mode of interaction in the present moment. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. Oh, they're pushing my buttons. No, they're past that. They can't push your buttons. They are responding. And I loved when you use the word authentic because that's just where
It's
it's
so
at.
real and genuine.
And I think one of the problems I see here in the US, I don't know if you have it, but
Mm,
when we hire people, we have a job description, and
yeah.
typically that job description is all task oriented. And
Mm,
even if it has a clause in there about
right.
being relationship based, if that talk's not walked, if that
Mm,
talk's not taught,
yeah.
it ain't happening. And then
No.
it's just tasks and micromanaging. And
Right.
then the relationships, they can't build and survive in an environment that doesn't nurture it.
Totally. I love the word nurture
Yeah. And then
because, yes, it's important that we understand the medical and physiological type of support that people require, because many old people don't just have dementia, they have a whole lot of other comorbidities that have to be well managed. Because evidently, if you don't manage someone's pain effectively, well, they're not going to live with a sense of well-being. If you don't manage someone's diabetes effectively, they're not going to live with a sense of well-being. It's like putting all the pieces of a picture together, a jigsaw puzzle. If there's gaps in that jigsaw puzzle, you're never going to get it. You're never going to be able to provide true relationship, person centered care for that individual. People aren't generic. What works for one person is not going to work for another. So we need to put all of that information together. And yes, we need to look at the medical and physiological support, but we also need to look at cognitive support and psychological support. And then all of those beautiful feel good psychosocial and emotional support, because that is one of the most important parts of being a human being. We're social animals. Without other people in our life engaging with us in a meaningful way on a day-to-day basis, we give up. It's like ripping someone's heart out. It crucifies their soul, because basically what you're saying is, I don't think you're important enough to engage with you anymore because I don't think you can, instead of adapting to their level and interacting with them in a different way that makes them feel seen and heard, and include them in part of their own life in a manner that enables them to live well. We need to be more inclusive of people that are different, because different doesn't have to be bad or wrong. Different can be amazing and wonderful. And it's those differences that make us special. So we should be celebrating that in regards to everyone, and have unconditional regard to every single human being, regardless of what medical conditions they live with.
yeah. When my mom was in a nursing home, I came up
Yeah,
one day with a camera and I was just taking pictures of her. And I
yeah.
go, say cheese. And it was amazing. And this gets to the point you're talking about being seen and heard and
Mm,
part of. We had people in wheelchairs that I had never seen talk. And my mom was there for a long time. And their heads lifted, their eyes open, smiles, just by saying cheese. And so then I started asking people, do you want your picture taken? And nowadays there's more regulations on this than there was, she's been gone since 2014. But it wouldn't have made any difference if there was camera or film in the
mm,
camera or not. They came alive because they
right?
were seen. They
Yeah,
felt important. You don't take a picture of something if it's not important.
that's it.
It's very
That's
simple.
it. And we don't want people to feel like they're a burden, or that they're not worthy, or that, my life has nothing to give. I remember a long time ago going around and interviewing a whole lot of older people in residential aged care, um, because what I was looking at was loneliness. And I
Mhm.
called the paper Loneliness is the Ultimate Poverty. I think I've sent it to you. And it's a real emotive piece. It's written to make people feel. Um, because I remember one lady who said to me, she's surrounded by hundreds of people every day, but she's never felt so lonely in her whole life. In fact, she expressed that she felt invisible.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know about you, but I would never want to hear that come out of someone's mouth. Imagine feeling invisible. You would just give up, wouldn't
Yep.
you?
Yep.
And this is what I mean when people are treated like they are lesser than human and people don't bother to engage with them anymore and they just all rush past them and they don't actually get on their level and communicate or interact meaningfully on a day-to-day basis, people do start to withdraw, like you said earlier, and socially isolate themselves from life because it's all too hard. We're making it too difficult for them. Now, you don't want that to happen because that then can lead to chronic depression. And chronic depression is a major issue in this cohort,
Mhm.
in older people, especially living in residential aged care. And this was another study I did years ago in 2003, and I'm still banging on about this one, where I identified that over 65% of people that are admitted into residential aged care have an undiagnosed depression as well as their dementia. Now imagine having both, because depression doesn't isn't part of dementia. It's a separate mental health condition. So, and you can treat it. That's the good news. And so, what I did was I treated all these people who had an undiagnosed depression because often people in the medical field will look at those changes in cognition and go, oh, it's just an exacerbation of someone's dementia. But it's not, it's the depression causing it. Because in general, dementia works quite slowly. So if you see a rapid deterioration in somebody's presentation, it's usually not their dementia at all. But this is what people say it is. It's going to be either depression or acute delirium, which can be due to so many other factors like pain or dehydration or infection or lack of sleep or lack of engagement, etc., unfamiliar environments. But with depression, we've got to think about it. Imagine getting to a point in your life where you have always been the care person, you've brought up your families, you have maybe been the breadwinner, you have supported your friends all through your life, you might have had an amazing career, and you've got to a point in your life where you have to acknowledge that you need to accept support to care for yourself. And you have to move into an aged care facility, for instance. Then, on top of that, you're getting to a point in your life where you've only got this much time left. This is the last part of your journey. This is the last chapter. Being aware of your own mortality is a pretty frightening thing. You might have lost your husband or your wife or your children or half your friends. You know, you're losing so much independence by having to move into establishments where everything about your life is contained into one tiny little room for the rest of your life. And all of a sudden you don't know what's going on. Imagine, of course, people are going to get depressed, right?
Yeah.
So, what we need to do is identify that and then treat it so that people living with dementia can live better without that insidious nature of depression also getting in the way. And what I found at the end of that study, the most concerning thing of all was that four of those residents returned to full cognitive function. They didn't have dementia at all. They'd been misdiagnosed with dementia when they actually only had chronic depression.
And that is so common. Or people be diagnosed depression when it actually is dementia.
Yeah, it can go either way.
Hormones, or there's a lot of misdiagnosis out there.
Yeah,
It takes a long time. So again, getting to know the person and the
that's
family of
it.
what are the changes and when do they occur, because sometimes it's like little things when you're talking about the psychosocial stuff and being
Mm.
involved, but it's also being aware of environment and
Oh, absolutely. I
like I don't
mean, you know,
know.
for people, it's important that we understand that dementia affects every single person differently, not because of the dementia, but because of who they are. So if we don't know the person, we have Buckley's of providing support that is responsive to that person's needs. It just makes sense to me. It's
Oh,
not
totally,
rocket science, right? And
totally.
when it comes to emotional well-being, having a sense of control is a basic adult need. And when this is dishonored, it leads to despair and misery. So if we remove choice or don't create environments and create situations where people feel isolated with no means of interacting, when that is a basic human need, like I said earlier, that alienates people from life and causes deterioration and generates situations where the rights of people with dementia are again corrupted and violated. And in all honesty, if I was sat in a chair for the rest of my life facing forward and no one spoke to me or bothered to engage with me, I wouldn't be happy about that. And I would be making sure that everybody knows that I wasn't happy about that, because that is my right.
Yep.
And, you know, it means that we have to endeavor to conceive the absoluteness and validity of every person in regards to that grand diversity of the human population. And there's such diversity there, right? I mean, we're a very multicultural society here in Australia, and I'm sure where you are as well. If we ignore that, we're basically saying to someone, well, we don't really care enough about you to put it into place. And as far as I'm concerned, aging well initiatives for people with dementia reinforce that going without is not an option. If you start ripping everything that's important to a person's life away from them, they're going to tell you.
Well, and that gets into what we were talking kind of offline a little bit about risk factors,
Yeah.
and life has risks to it. And, unless you're going to put somebody in a bubble, things can happen. And even when we think we've controlled it, still stuff can happen. So
Of course.
we have to look at what gives somebody joy and comfort and
That's it.
respect, all of that. The other thing I want to touch on a little bit, because we were talking about stigmas. I have seen so many people living with dementia who speak out and become advocates and go to conferences get bullied because people say, well, you're not like my husband or my wife or my friend. Oh, yeah, it's horrible out there.
How judgy is the human race, right?
It happens a lot to them online. And, they have their cohorts and friends and professionals are part of that group that, gather around them and stuff. But it's like the first time I heard that happening, I was shocked. Every time it just cuts through my heart that this is happening when they are working so hard to make the world a better place and to really educate people and put their life out there, and then somebody telling them that can't be.
I know, or you don't have dementia. I've actually got some friends living with dementia who have been exposed to that level of bullying because they present so well. They refuse to allow dementia to define who they are. And a few of them have had younger onset dementia, so obviously they've still got dementia, but they're now my age, in their 60s now. However, they have come across that form of bullying. How cruel to do that and to make assumptions just because someone presents well with dementia that you then question whether they have it or not.
Yeah. I had one person, and he won't mind me saying his name, Michael Ellenbogen. Michael would speak at conferences, and he sent me over his talk one time, and I'm like, I can't read this. I mean, he's got things bolded and all capitals and different colors. But he would get behind that podium, and he was on spot. But he's adapted. They always say, too, they don't know what it's like when I get, let's say, off the stage. And, I'm preparing for like a week or two solid, the stress and things of that. And then I crash for 3 days, but they're like, I'm out of it because I've put so much in my body has to recoup. And they all say, I don't talk about that side of it because they want to be the advocate. Even if they told people that, there's going to be people out there that don't believe that. And that's one of my things I'd like to see change too. That people, none of us should be bullied, period.
No, and I think we get way too caught up in, people are really good at Googling stuff, right? The internet can be a wonderful thing, but it can also be a curse. And when people look up dementia, you're given big generic lists of information in general. Now, that can be really helpful as long as you understand that when you look at that information, you understand that not everybody presents the same.
Yep.
And so some people might present this way, and a couple of the things might be familiar, but the rest of it doesn't happen because of who they are, and also what other conditions they have, etc., etc. So we can't continue, sorry about the cough, we can't continue assuming that all people with dementia are going to be presenting in exactly the same way. And when they don't, it doesn't mean they don't have dementia. It just means that dementia is impacting on them in a different way because of who they are. We're all a product of our own life transitions. So it's never going to be the same. And that's why it's so important to look at that information with a bit of a grain of salt, take it on board, but then not look at the person and adapt it to them, and never make assumptions, because when we make assumptions, then we start guessing what that person needs. And most of the time when we guess, we place them at risk. We
Yeah.
either disable them by these attitudes, and we can't be disabling people further when they've already got a disability, by assuming that all people present the same. So we have to adapt to it for the person, and potentially as it becomes more progressive, not usually in the early stages, but maybe at the moderate to advanced stages, assist them with the areas that they struggle with and identify them properly, but encourage them to maintain their capabilities and strengths, because people always have strengths and they always have capabilities, and we need to have a much more conducive strength-based and capability-based approach to enabling people living with dementia to live well with dementia, instead of taking everything away from them based on all of these generic lists that we think apply to everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Yeah.
one of the things that I've learned over the years and how I teach and train
Mm,
is I try not to I try to talk about ways we can change, but
mm,
how they can apply it in all of their life, because I believe
yeah.
what's good for dementia is good for everything. So
Yeah.
when we're saying, we don't want to pigeonhole somebody,
Yeah.
have them look back and go, would you like to be referenced as your brother or your sister or your aunt or your uncle
Right.
or your mom or your dad?
Or a person with dementia, like, it's a person. This is a person first.
Yeah,
And
we're
the
all
only way to
different.
really approach it is to ask the person.
Mm-hmm.
They are considered the authority on them, not
Yep,
us.
yep. But a
And
lot
so
of
why is it
times,
we take away that right as well? It's not cool to do that to someone. Everybody has the right to state what they want and how they want to live their life.
but the difficult part comes in, I think, for so many people is when
Mm.
someone can't communicate with
Mm.
words, because we've gotten so reliant on words. And this is what I found really funny too. And I
Yeah.
found it not just with dementia, but other diseases, that people who jump into care a lot of times, they're so anxious to do
Mm.
a good job
Mm.
that they forget life was not perfect before the disease hits. And so, why do you want
Mm.
this? Why are you putting the marker way up
Yeah.
here when it
That's
goes
it.
like this? It's up,
That's it.
it's down, it's all over. And, usually people will laugh and go, oh, I never thought of it like that. But,
Mm.
because we want to do a good job, we put those high expectations, sometimes not just on ourselves but
Mm.
others, and then
Yep.
we miss a lot.
We
Or
do. We can become very reliant on that verbal aspect of communication. It's
Mhm.
actually only 7%. I
Yeah,
know that you
I
might find
know.
that hard when you talk to me, because it's probably a lot more with me, but I can communicate with someone without speaking. However, when we look at people with dementia, for instance, who have word finding difficulties, or their vocabulary isn't what it used to be, then we should be adapting to that, because that's only really 7%. But unfortunately, a lot of people assume that if someone can't speak, they can't communicate, and they forget about all those other wonderful, genuine, authentic ways of communicating, which is through our body language and our tone and all the other amazing ways that we communicate with our facial expressions and our gestures and everything else. Because when a person with dementia, if they can't verbalize things anymore, oh my God, they're still communicating, but we're just not seeing it.
Yep.
And they can read our body language really well,
Exactly. Well, and I
right? And it
would think,
provides reinforcement to what's coming out of someone's mouth. So we do have to become more attuned to reading the room and observing people so that we don't cut the communication off from them. Because when there's a communication breakdown, what happens? It causes conflict. It
Mhm.
happens in day to day life with all of us. How frustrating it is when you're trying to communicate and no one's listening.
Yeah. Because
So, again, we have to learn different methods of communicating. I call it learning the language of dementia. Hopefully, that doesn't offend people with dementia because it's just about us learning to adjust ourselves to the person.
yeah, I do a thing called dementia chats where I, let them speak and tell us kind of what's what. I'm just kind of a facilitator for
Mm.
that. And it's been so interesting. I've learned so much from them. They talk about as the disease progresses, they're like, think of somebody who's blind or who has a hearing
Right?
deficit. Most will say their other senses get better, and so they talk about how colors are brighter, how sounds are,
Mm,
louder for many of them,
mm,
and so other things take over, and so it's
mm.
even more critical to watch all of that, I call it multi-sensory communication.
Yeah.
But I think in the day and age that we live in, we have our phones and we're texting,
Oh,
and so
mm.
we're not seeing any of this, we're not hearing any of this, and so we're training
People are
people.
learning not to socially interact face to face, aren't they?
Exactly. You see, especially younger generations, and
Mm,
not everyone, but we are seeing a huge change that they don't know how
yeah.
to communicate. They don't know how to give eye contact or ask a question in person or sit next to somebody. Their
Right.
comfort levels have
Have a
really
chat.
changed. Yeah.
They say the best learning experience is at the feet of an old person.
Yeah.
Get to know someone, right?
So
Important that
much.
they understand how limiting interaction can be if we continue down this road, right? And when we withdraw people with dementia from regular interface with others, then it magnifies our own distorted responses as well, right? But I reckon we should commend again people with dementia on their resourcefulness in compensating for those losses that they have by generating this really ingenious way of reaching out through displaying their feelings through emotion. It's much more than we do for them in return. So we really need to hone these skills better so that we don't isolate people in their reality in the way that we do by just assuming that people can't communicate because the word thing isn't happening or the speaking part of it.
Or they're not speaking fast enough and we cut them off. And then they withdraw and then they get mad that they're withdrawn. Well, I don't know what's wrong with them. And, they must be having an
Yeah.
issue. And it's just like, because you were rude. You were
Mm.
rude to them.
And when someone's rude to me, it usually gets my back up. I get really irritated when people are really rude to me. I think, why? And it
Yep.
frustrates me. And sometimes I just want to be really rude back. So it depends on the person.
Yeah. Well,
But,
and it
you know,
does.
if I'm rude back, what are they going to go? Oh, behavior?
And there's kind of two camps in that too. There's a person who will step up and kind of give it back to you. And there's
Yeah.
a person that says, I
Yeah.
just want I don't want anything to do with this. And
Mm,
I'm gonna take a hike, or I'm
yeah.
gonna sit in the corner and be withdrawn. And then they're judged on those
All the
aspects.
features that we complain about, we're sort of causing,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right?
So much of the time. So much
Yeah,
of the
so
time.
instead of continuing our attempts to relate to people with dementia in the exact way we communicated with them before their cognitive changes,
Mhm.
shouldn't we attempt, because we're the ones that are cognitive here, well, supposedly, shouldn't we attempt to develop a more successful blueprint for bridging the gap by honoring their capabilities and being flexible enough to do that? Because when you do that, then interaction and communication and relationships continue.
Exactly.
And it's a beautiful thing.
And they can really blossom. A lot of times in business we'll ask somebody, how do you
Mm,
prefer to be communicated? Do you want a phone call? Do you prefer a hard letter,
yeah.
or are you okay with an email or a text? But we don't do that with a person with dementia. We don't have that
No.
conversation. and a lot of them will say, well, I really use Facebook. I don't use email anymore. And because there's so many places you can communicate, and tracking all that down. But then we don't ask that about body language. When you're in front of somebody, what is helpful for you? And
Yeah.
most people with dementia that I have talked to said, I I didn't know I read lips. I didn't know I was
Because we
taking.
do it automatically, don't we?
Exactly. And so, but when you have a deficit and you're trying to adapt, those
Mm,
things are brought to light because it's not something we talk about. It's not something, anyways, here
yeah.
in the US that's taught in school, how this affects you. And the way we communicate in so many levels now, it desensitizes people and it increases, in my opinion,
Yeah.
miscommunication.
Yeah, there is a definite callous disregard that occurs as soon as people hear someone's got dementia. But
Yep.
also, I mean, when you think about it, if you see somebody and you know they are deaf or if they're legally blind, don't we adapt ourselves to that quite well? So why is it that when we hear someone's got dementia, we withdraw that? That's what doesn't make sense to me. That's what confuses me because we're so quick to adapt ourselves often to other people. If I saw a kid with Down syndrome down the street, I would adapt myself immediately based on the fact that I know that they potentially would not be able to communicate on the level that I do. So I would adjust myself. So I think that people with dementia deserve exactly the same sort of experience. And this is where we need to start educating society as a whole to be more inclusive of people with dementia, because unfortunately, um, that discrimination, that marginalisation and segregation and ostracising them from life continues. And that just rips the soul out of somebody and destroys them. And that's why people deteriorate faster because of a broken heart.
Yeah. Well, and it's even like, someone who's blind might have a cane. And so
Mm,
that's a cue to kind of know. We don't always see hearing aids because they're getting so small unless they
sure.
squeal. But
Mm,
even with that, people will yell instead of
mm.
like, do you have hearing loss in one ear versus the other? And they're just in their face.
Because when we raise our voice, traditionally, what does that mean? It means we're angry. Now, in the mind of someone with more advanced dementia, for instance, cognitive changes, if someone's raising their voice at them, they're not going to sit there and go, oh, they're raising their voice to make it easier for me to hear. They might actually respond to what you're putting out, which sounds like you're angry. Your body language changes when you raise your voice, so you look angry. And that is what they might respond to potentially. And that's
Exactly.
why people might push you away or yell back at you. Because after speaking to older people, when we raise our voice, that's the type of perception it gives. But also, if someone does have hearing loss, it actually distorts it further. It doesn't help. So, but we do things like that. Even just when we stand over someone and look down at them and force them to look up at us when we're talking to them, that's actually an intimidation tactic
Yep.
in the real world. That's what bullies do. So if we're standing over someone, even though we're not meaning to be intimidating, that could be perceived as intimidating in the mind of someone with moderate to advanced cognitive changes, because that's what people do to intimidate you in the real world.
Oh,
So
for
when we
sure.
look at it through the eyes of the people that we are actually supporting, then we start seeing things so much differently. And then we can start adjusting ourselves in a way that's not so overwhelming and scary and make them feel inferior or frustrated or anxious. Because if we're continually making someone feel like that, like we said at the very beginning, they're just going to withdraw from life.
Yeah, which is really, really sad. Gosh, there's so many kind of stress points
Mm.
when people are dealing with dementia. How do you avoid some of those stress responses as a person living with dementia or as a care partner? Do you have
It's
any
about
tips on
working
that?
together in a partnership with the person. So knowing the person so well in every way that you enable them to continue life as they know it, not how you know it or how you think is right for them, because that's not going to work. Wouldn't work for me. I'm very particular with how I live my life. So if you didn't do it how I preferred it, I'd be telling you constantly through my responses that you're not getting it, right? So when we understand everything about a person, when we look at physical needs, like I said, if somebody hasn't had their pain relief and you go to get them up and they push you away or punch you, well, it's because you haven't given them their pain relief yet. So to avoid that, you give them their pain relief, give it time to work, and then when you go to assist them to get up, they won't react in that way. It's as simple as that. So you break down everything about a person's life. You look at all of their physical needs, you look at all their emotional needs, all their routines, their choices, their preferences, their background, their life experiences. And like I said earlier, put it all together. Because if you keep everything as familiar as you possibly can, obviously speak to the person. They're the authority. They're the one that are going to give you the information you need. But they might not be able to say, no, that's not how I want it. You need to do it this way. They might be able to do it, and they often can. And if they do, we need to listen and only do it that way, because anything different, anything that confuses a person or doesn't make sense to a person cognitively is going to trigger the lowered stress threshold, which leads to anxiety, agitation, possibly anger, possibly sadness or fear. And we don't want people to feel those emotions. People with dementia feel just as intently as they always have, like we do. Feelings are organic. You don't need to be cognitive to feel emotion. So our aims when we reduce any type of stress-related response is to remove the stressors from that person's life, and then only do it in a way that makes sense to them. And then all of a sudden, no more stress-related responses, because there's no need for them to communicate that we're not getting it right. And that can be due to emotional needs, meaningful engagement, relationships, things that they like doing, routines that are familiar. The environment needs to be very much indicative of what's required to enable people to live well and draw on their full potential and not cause needless disability. So, we need it to be enriching and inviting, but it needs to make sense, and we can't have too many combined noises, because acoustic intrusion is another reason why a lot of people go, oh, this is too much, because if you think about it, for instance, in a residential care environment, you've got you might sit somebody in a room with 40 other people. Now, is that normal? If I had 40 other people in my lounge room every day, I would be screaming all day. It would drive me crazy. And if I was able, I would get up and I'd be punching people, because that would do my head in, right? Now, on top of that, you've got all the staff talking, and then you've got a telly on over there, and then you've got the cleaner with the vacuum cleaner, and then you've got all the trolleys going clatter, 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 clatter. That is not a healthy environment for anyone to be exposed to for long periods of time. It's like hitting someone on the head over and over and over again with a mallet and expecting them not to respond, right? So if we understand all of these type of things and create environments in which people feel comfortable and they're familiar and they feel like home, and they have time to be by themselves as well as with other people as per their own choices, and then understand what is meaningful to them, not what is meaningful to us or what we think is meaningful to all old people, and continue everything that's important in their life, then we know what all their specific predilections are. And that means that we can initiate a world in which that person can continue living their life as they choose, because that's their right. And when people are happy and we are stimulating all those beautiful positive emotions like happiness and joy and delight and wonder every minute of every day, that person's had a great day, right? So it's about
Exactly.
us understand our job is happiness,
Yeah.
right? And so when we understand that, it works. I won an award years ago for my frameworks because many years ago I ran aged care facilities for people with dementia. And I tested out all my theories that had been running around in my head for years and started conducting all of my research. And some of it I conducted while I was doing my master's, but other research I did even before then. And what I did was establish personalised, relationship based frameworks of support that were tailored to every single individual. No two people were ever the same. But when you do that, my staff hated me at the beginning because it's like, oh, so much extra work. But in the end, it wasn't, because they weren't having to deal with stress related responses for half of their day every day, which freed them up to deliver this amazing, incredible level of care. And I was able to eliminate all stress related responses in 40 people with dementia who were all sent to me because they were so called unmanageable. And I'm like, yeah, bring it on. And within 12 months, no behavior, none of them on medications, all of them living their life. It was a place of joy. And that's when magic happens, my friend. And people would walk in and go, oh, I wouldn't have thought that all of these people had dementia. And I'm like, well, what does dementia look like? This is the true face of dementia, right? This is what it looks like when you give people their life back. So there, but also the clinical side of it came into it, obviously, but all the rest of it was just as important, if not more. And the difference it made was extraordinary.
Well,
And that inspires me always to want to do more.
and don't you think what you taught your staff, and again, please
Yes.
disagree with me if you see this in a different light, but I think all of those learnings are applicable in all of their life. So it's enriching because what you learn from one person, you can use in the next person. You know, it's just
Absolutely.
it's another tool, and you know, I call it a reaction equation, what I use. And I tell people we have to look at what's a person's current attitude, what's their past experience, because that creates their perceptions. And then their perceptions trigger their reactions, which is what every single one of us do. Every single one of us
Exactly.
do.
You're
And
so
again,
right. I totally agree with you. And it does. It's these are tools that we can utilize in all aspects of life. I remember when my daughter was doing her primary school teaching, right? And so much in regards to children with special needs was very much relevant and parallel to the type of things that I was implemented in aged care. And she totally got that. But we never stopped growing either. So if we are open to all of this information ongoing, it enables us to be better support people, but better people, better human beings, better versions of ourselves. But when we look at creating teams of strength, because I'm only one person, right? So I'm only as good as my weakest link. And it only takes one person to wreck everything in when you're caring or supporting older people. It's a huge responsibility. And so I would handpick and train up all of my staff. I would get on the floor and work with them. I would lead by example. If they were struggling, I would get in there and I would show them how it's done, because the only way to inspire other people to believe in your dream is to actually change an entire philosophy and culture of care that has been inbred for a very long time. And that's another part of why I won the Australian and Global Award for Excellence in Innovation, because I was only able to do it because my team was so strong. I couldn't have done it without them.
and your company allowed you.
Oh, absolutely. The
Because a lot
company
of
gave
times,
me free reign. They
yeah.
were amazing. They basically let me do whatever I needed to do to show others how it's done. And that was really inspiring, but also quite humbling for me as well, that they believed in me enough, because this was quite a long time ago. It was only halfway through my career. And so at that point, I didn't have my reputation behind me like I do now, but it was an incredible experience, and it enabled me to create a situation where I've been able to build on that for the rest of my life, life's work, basically. And I've still got a lot more I want to achieve. I'm not stopping yet, right? I
Yeah.
can't take my eye off the ball yet. It's too important. I want to leave a legacy, because there's so many young people out there right now picking up the baton and going, yeah, hell yeah, I'm in for this ride as well, and are just as passionate and are just as wonderful. And so those of us who are getting older need to be able to leave enough for them to grab onto and expand upon, because it's going to continue going right forward. We
And
don't want it
that's
going backwards.
and that's such an important key, because so often I see companies, they don't really understand that next
Mm.
step, the
Mm-hmm.
succession step. And then
Mm.
they start from scratch all over. When I mentioned,
Mm.
companies have to let you do it, there can be big promises, and then
Yes.
staff will go, yeah, we've heard that before. And that's why they're hesitant to do the changes, because we've heard this 3 times prior that we're going to
Or the
make these.
cost.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
Budgets get
Yep.
pulled back, and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. So it really, and that whole leading by example that you talked about, critically important, because now you're one of them. And my guess is then you allowed them to bring ideas like, could we try this? And you get that open
Absolutely.
conversation. And now you've got buy-in, and that they get recognized when they troubleshoot,
Mm.
instead of being penalized and punished, which a lot of times happens in companies.
Well, that did happen early in my career. I mean, I was just as opinionated as I am now when I was a junior nurse. And I jump up and down, and go, no, this isn't right. No, 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 this isn't cared. No, no, no. And I was just told, well, if you don't like it, you can leave,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're looking at nearly 40 years ago. It was a horror story back then. Thank God we've gone so much further at this point. And this is what I always also look at, is we have come a long way, but we do need to do better. But we've come a very long way. And so it wasn't until I increased my qualifications, I started climbing the ladder a little bit and got myself into a position where I had the opportunity to create the change, that I was able to make a difference on the level that I truly desired to, or wanted to, because before then I had to work my way, blood, sweat, and tears, into a position where I'd be listened to. And no one really wants to listen to a junior registered nurse, which is unfortunate, because we've got a lot to say a lot of the time. But once I completed my master's, that gave me the leverage to start publishing information, and also gave a validity to my work. I found it annoying that I had to do that to give it validity, but I understood that it's a process. But it also enabled me to learn more,
Mm-hmm.
and
Sure.
which was really important, and also get more experience in the field, on the coalface, because it is an evidence-based and experience-based industry, and no two situations are ever going to be the same. So we have to have a lot in our repertoire to create change and make a difference.
Yeah, I was lucky enough growing up when I was in my 20s. I had a boss that was very open-minded. And one of the things that I
So
loved and I
cool.
would love to see adapted in healthcare on a
Mm.
wide level was every like 3 months, she would call staff in, 3 to 6 months, she would call staff in and review the job description. Is this still part of what you do? Because things hand off and
Right.
nobody talks about it.
And a
And
lot overlap.
yep,
There's nothing worse than someone going, no, it's not on my job description, and they won't do it.
yep.
It's like, no, come on now. We need to be a little bit more flexible here. We're all here for the same reason. And sometimes our roles overlap. Only you do this and only you do that. We work together as a team.
And
Mm.
she would always ask, what do you like best doing? What do you think are problems, without judging you,
Yeah.
what do you think are issues we need to tackle? And then she always had this open door policy that if you wanted to come to me with a problem, come with 2 to 3 ideas of how we fix it. And she was very upfront and would
Yeah.
always say, I will always listen. I can't promise we'll implement it, but I will appreciate the knowledge that you brought this to my attention, but I have to prioritize things.
Yeah.
And then I can share those things with you.
Yeah.
So she always really had this team team enrichment, and I would go
That's
in,
fantastic.
and to me that just changed the whole culture. I know it changed me as an individual big time, because I used to walk into her office and go, I'm a clog in the wheel, because I think I'm probably like you. I don't want to get in the way. I want to be productive.
I
There's
know, I
more
want to
stuff.
get in the way. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? I'm always in the way. I
Well,
like
but
to provoke and challenge.
but provoke and challenge, but get in the way of micromanaging my staff
Yeah.
when it's already passed
Well, you
over and
know
they're
what?
doing a great job.
When you trust your staff and you understand that you can delegate certain
Yeah.
things to them, that's empowering for that individual.
Oh
And
yeah.
by empowering people, this is when you start seeing change occur as well. Because traditionally, again, people that work in aged care can, especially personal care workers, um, are made to feel like they're not worthy, and they are the most important
Mhm.
people on the floor. And so having the ability to recognize those beautiful shining little stars that are out there and nurture them and empower them is something that I always find really exciting. And it's important that we listen to our staff, because everyone has their take on it. And when we put information together, like when I put information together, I say, okay, this is the problem, these are the solutions. I always give people the solutions. But when we work together, we can brainstorm that. And I call it like the brain trust,
Mhm.
where a whole lot of us can sit together and bounce off each other and get really excited, like you and I do together sometimes when
Yep.
we sit and talk. And this is where we start upping the ante and getting it, smashing it out of the stratosphere and coming up with solutions that are more innovation rather than just fixing a problem.
I totally agree. I
Mm.
totally agree. Well, Leah, this has just been, as always, such a fabulous conversation. As you know, I adore you, and we could talk probably
Back at you,
24
girlfriend.
hours and probably wouldn't get tired talking, because I think we're just kind of on the same page and things. But I want to make sure that we give people your contact information. So
Sure.
your website is upliftingdementia.com. And then you are on Instagram.
Uplifting lower dash dementia. It's just a blog.
Mhm.
So I just, it's more for your average person that just wants to read some of my work. So what I do is I just put up information like on loneliness or depression and dementia or delirium and dementia, medication and my views on chemical restraint, and all of the areas that a lot of people ask me to put up. But I also put up stories, and lovely feel good things that show people what is possible. And then I'm just on LinkedIn as a professional, so you can always find me on LinkedIn. I don't tend to do much other social media. I don't have heaps of time usually to do so, but I'm always happy for people to connect me through the website. But my email and phone numbers are on the website as well.
And you
Talking to
feel
you
so
is always
isolated.
such an absolute pleasure, and
Yeah,
I get so much out of it. And I want to thank you again for having me.
I love having these conversations. So, to our audience, I always ask you to be a giver of hope. Like, click and share, not because we're
Yeah.
counting numbers, but because we know your input and your ability to share can affect so many others, because you have people in your own sphere, people maybe you don't really know that you're friends with on
Mm,
Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, or Instagram, or coworkers, whatever it might be, that are dealing with this topic.
mm.
And you don't know it because
Well, most people are
Mhm,
in this day and age. Every single new person I meet, even all
mhm,
my friends,
mhm,
everyone I know, we're all now having conversations about dementia. Even my daughter rang me last night and said, I was sitting in the staff room at work and I was listening to two of the teachers talking about one of their mums who's got dementia. And I wanted to jump in because they were getting it all wrong. And I said, well, you should have, sweetheart. Like, and I'm now, which is probably one of the greatest privileges for me, helping a lot of my friends with their families,
mhm.
because there's nothing better than being able to help your mates when they're struggling or when their families are. That to me is the most amazing experience of all. So we're all here to support each other in this world. And I was hoping I could finish off with one of my own quotes. Can I do that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so once again, thank you for allowing me to share the joy with you. It's been incredible. And I'd like to finish off with saying, evidently, we are accountable for nurturing our own humanity to support civilization and value the cultivation of kindness by respecting our vulnerable older population, especially people with dementia. We must acquire the ability to develop compassion. We should critique isolation and reintroduce community and culture changes, subsequently refining our great power and precision in response to a more humane philosophy. Reach out and be proud to advocate and provide a voice of strength for the empathy revolution. Together we are more powerful. Bang.
I love that. The empathy revolution.
Be the change you want to see in the world, Gandhi.
So true. So true. And
Yeah.
it's easier than we think because you don't have to make all the changes all at once. You
Mm.
can ease into it
Oh,
to make sure that you're comfortable. And those slow changes, what I love, and I'm sure you saw this when you were, especially when you were like the executive director and stuff. Those small little things, they have a ripple effect. When you just give somebody eye contact or smile or
right?
just say hi and acknowledge. It doesn't, and it can be as you're walking down the hall instead of looking at your iPad or your phone,
Yeah.
you're aware of who's
The
around
difference
you.
that much. It's like you said, I always say it's like a domino effect.
Mhm.
You change one thing and then everything else starts to change after it. But even just something as simple as going up to someone and giving them a compliment, we forget how that makes someone feel. You look nice today. Oh,
Yep.
I love that tone. You look handsome. Oh, that's a pretty color. Or giving someone a hug or holding their hand. Just those tiny little parts of affection that is so important to our life that we forget about, that are so important. Imagine if no one ever gave you a hug ever again.
Oh,
Like, oh my God. And so when we start breaking it down like that, it's these little things that all build up together to create this one beautiful bubble of bliss that enable people to live in these beautiful worlds where we all look out for each other and understand how different we all are, but celebrate each other for those differences. And that's when it becomes really special.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely have you back because I love talking with you. And I know my
Yippee!
audience is gonna love listening to this and watching this as well. So thank you again,
Oh, I
everyone.
can hardly wait.
Yeah. And thank you to our audience for being part of our community here
Absolutely.
at Alzheimer's Speaks.
Bye
We'll talk
bye.
soon. Bye bye.